Welcome to the Horsemanship Remarks Show. It's been pouring down rain, which we seriously got robbed because a lot of the times in Oregon we have all of October, which is absolutely gorgeous. So we got screwed. What's going on?
Oh, how was Buck's clinic? I missed it. I'm so disappointed.
Yeah, that stinks. You would have liked it.
And we haven't even had a chance to catch up since.
I know that kind of works in our favor in terms of the show.
Stuff to talk about. Why would I?
Have you read Golf is Not a Game of Perfect?
I have not. I've heard. I think you've mentioned it before.
Yeah, and I haven't read it all, just because there's lots to think about as you kind of go through. But the thing that really kind of sticks with you from the beginning is the concept that two things. You don't adjust your game in the middle of your game. You adjust your game in practice. Number two, if you, this is, of course, in the context of golf, but if you have a few mess up holes, then the secret is don't let that thrash your whole game. And it's so easy for that to happen, right? Like, it sounds so simple. Like, just keep focusing. But, certainly I would think that can happen in horsemanship. Okay, I got to get this cat off my lap because...
Gotta just block it
out. What?
You gotta just block it out.
Yeah, exactly. And just keep on rolling. Know your game and stick with your game. So, you would have liked to see Boozy transition, which, we've seen him do that before. But I just feel like it's always good to get the vibe of how that transitions. And every horse is physically different, I have to say. And I keep saying this to Buck. That horse shooter, I mean, that's a very, very pretty picture, the two of them together. It's the word that comes to mind is spectacular. There, and we're just at the very beginning. This horse is just in the middle of the snaffle bit stage. This is not, he's not wearing all the fancy gear or anything like that. And it is, I told Buck, I'm like, before you cut that one out of your string, watch some video because you're going to be impressed, Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure you can see yourself.
Yeah. Well, he won't be looking at himself, of course, but he'll be looking at the horse.
The pair.
But
the centaur.
Yeah, it's really pretty to watch. And I let Flora ride Zorro one day after class. That was one of my super highlights. Oh my gosh, it was so fun. Awesome. Because Zorro has spent some time with Clem and Flora.
They bailed you out of a pinch there when your trailer truck died or something?
Oh, he didn't stay with them. No, that's somebody different. No, he just knows them from Dayton, and they've just been super nice to him. They clean his stall every morning, and they're the ones, because Zorro, from being a stallion all those years, and not being turned out with anybody except for eventually Nativo and now my horses, he's still like, in a way, he's very confident around the other horses. But also, when he gets close, that's weird to him still. So having everyone pet him, and really Clem and Flora petting on him in Dayton and horseback, we're all horseback, was a big deal to him. And he's always had an affinity for them, since then. So letting her get on him was not just like, oh, hey, drive my Porsche, It's like, He already loves you. Get on him, pet him. And so then he got all proud. It was the coolest thing. And Robbie was in there riding. Now I'm looking at Robbie. I'm like, this is the best. The look on her face when he did his big forward flank change and passaging around. I'll ask her if it's okay for me to post the passaging video. It's so cute because... And Zorro's looking at me. That was the other exciting thing, is he started looking at me over the last week and a half. Did I say that last week?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, because it just barely started last week. So I'm watching them go, and he's looking at me. I'm like, and of course, Flora. The thing is, when you go from riding the quarter horse to the Andalusian, the angle of everything is totally different, right? So if you're sitting as if you're riding a flat quarter horse, especially at the snaffle bit stage, the horse is going to feel kind of squashed down. So as soon as I adjusted her balance, and I'm like, Zoro, do your thing, and he did. Oh my god. Oh my gosh. And then Clem came in at the end, and Hannah, and so we're all kind of, fussing around him, and then I was like, well, do you want to see a Spanish walk? This is where I was like, okay, I'll show you a few of his tricks, and he's kind of doing this Spanish walk, and then he also does a bow, but he laid down for them.
No way.
Yeah. And he'll lay down and roll. He's got that kind of on cue. But in terms of folding up and laying down as if you were going to get on him, we've never done that before. And in warm up, I mean, well, after class, so that was a big deal. He could have been high and scared. Yeah, he laid down.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was like.
And just hung out there with Clem?
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
It was. And, I have my McCarty loop is super long because I ride Maggie and Davina with it. So it's longer than I would have if it was just Zorro. Uh-huh. And so, of course, I'm looking at the loop. And I'm like, that was my only thing, is just looking at his front feet. Yeah, because I just wouldn't want him to get hooked in there. But let me tell you the most interesting thing. I came in Thursday with Zorro, and I was by myself.
Yeah.
And I knew we were going to ride for like an extended period of time, right? And what's really great about Zorro is he's not herd bound at all. And it's not something I've had to work at. It's just something that is in a way a double-edged sword, in the sense that he does not naturally take comfort from anyone, including me. But he's not drawn to the gate. He's not drawn to other horses. He's just, a thing in and of himself. And then, of course, it's been a practice of getting him bonded to me. But I'm not fighting.
Which is handy. That can really dominate good portions of, your time with your horse, is just, particularly a horse calls out and they're in an unfamiliar situation. It's like, okay, for the next however long, that is my sole focus, is getting your feet moving to get your mind back before we can really get back to work.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah, and you know how it is the night before the clinic. Like, it's so freaking loud because the horses are just screaming their heads off and fussy in their stall. And, Zoro's just like, like I said, the other side of that coin is how inclined is he to bond, right? Because I feel like once you get those herd mount horses bonded to you, then it's very powerful. Remember Vivian watching me when I went to the bathroom that day, like she's like hooked on. But it is kind of nice to have a little break from that. So we were in there by ourselves, and of course he is scared of the environment, although an empty arena scares him a lot less than everybody in there. The gist of what was interesting about that is I did very, very little with him. Because again, I knew I had all the time in the world. So it's not like I got in there and started moving his feet or anything like that. Kind of leading on by back and forth against the concrete there.
Very well.
And yeah, so he was really concerned when I would tap those are guys that haven't been there. There's like I don't know, 3-foot wall, maybe 3-foot concrete pour around the outside of this arena, and then there's these two cables that make up. It's not really the safest thing. I don't know how they came up with that originally. Then when the cable moves, that's really can be nerve-wracking to the horses, especially Zorro. He's so sensitive to sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I would tap that thing at first, he's just like, oh my God. But just kind of patiently leading on by and waiting for him to kind of dwell.
Mm-hmm.
And, one side was more dramatic than the other. But right away, because then he made a big change. And I hadn't really done much. And what's interesting to me about getting all the different horses prepared for stuff, like there's all sorts of different strategies. I remember like with Nigel, I was like, he needed to kind of trot his ass off before class, right? Purposefully.
I hardly remember him, but yeah.
How dare you?
Well, not that I don't remember him. I didn't see much of him. I think I've seen you ride him maybe twice, maybe.
Oh.
Yeah, well, it was more Lil.
And Lil was like the most traditional warm-up. Just exactly what you would kind of think. Don't use your horse up before class, but really, really traditional. Really exactly like hindquarters, forequarters, kind of, some open serpentines, little trotting, like very, very traditional.
Yeah.
Nigel, trot your ass, no cantering, trot your ass off. And I would really kind of trot him for maybe 15 minutes straight was the deal, right? So I'm saying you kind of work these things out, and with Vivian, if you remember her, it was all about like she just wanted to canter around, do her flying changes, and it took about 6 minutes. But I think she would have been less happy if she didn't have a chance to just kind of stretch out. So with Zorro, I have done all sorts of different things because I've already ridden him in 3 butt clinics before this one. So one of them I was like, oh, he needs more cardio, which did help a little bit. And that was a little bit like, okay, he needs to stretch his feet. We need to make sure we can do walk, trot, canter. Of course, being able to tap the saddle and all those sorts of things. Well, to sum it up, doing those very quiet lead on bys on Thursday, all of a sudden he's yawning and like actually yawning, which is new. And then Robbie came in, and we rode together for a couple hours and he could do everything. It was no big deal. Once we had some relaxation, it wasn't like, because part of the problem, as you know, can be that they get confident standing still, and then it's a meltdown if you try to move them, or they get confident walking around, but if you try to trot, canter, etc., there's no horse. The horse can't cope. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the case at all. Like he felt great. So, and then at the end of that, he shook with the saddle with me on him as we were talking. Oh, and then the other thing about Zorro is sometimes because he was so regimented as he was training, he, would get moved around a little bit. He'd have a 30-minute ride and then he was done, right? So for us, this whole concept of we're going to do something, we're going to stand around, then we're going to do something again, then we're going to stand around, So suddenly he is yawning, like real yawning, not kind of head down, sort of chomping, not really chomping, but kind of yawning at the bit. It wasn't that. It was like legit yawning. And I could see it because I'm standing right in front of him, right? So then when we were standing around talking to Robbie, he's cocking a leg. Like, how long it's been where I'm like, okay, so part of your job is to be a couch. Part of your job is to be a pet. Part of your job is to be a coach. All the other stuff you have down.
Yeah.
So for him to cock a leg was a big deal. And then, like I said, he shook with the saddle with me on him. And you know how some horses get to that so early.
Yeah.
And he's not scared of the saddle at all. So like with Rook, when she shook with the saddle, which hasn't been with me on her yet. But that was a huge deal because she was afraid of the saddle. Zorro's not afraid of the saddle. It was just, a letting down. Yeah. So this was new. Remember I said we were going to have new data. So Friday rolls around and It was a little bit rainy, but dry-ish, but it freaks him out to be in that arena. If I put cotton in his ears, like, or a little bonnet or something to, as they do, he would have been like golden. Because visually, he's blind spots handled, like, all the stuff. But the sounds are the big thing. So I rode into the arena and I'm like, I think I'm gonna, no, I came in on foot just for a second. The big thing is, like, do we have our little cocoon of peace, like, standing still, right? Like, just stand still, just stay with me. So I didn't do anything. I just didn't do anything because, I got on, we kind of walked around just a little bit, but everyone was in there. And the good thing is when you go to a clinic and the horses, and so he knows the horses and, the people, so you're chatting with the people and the horse kind of gets the clue. So, but very quickly he wanted to stand still because he kind of figured that out from summer, that there were places like that he would get comfortable in the arena, maybe not everywhere, but he could stand still, right? So you could tell he was on to that. So I was like, well, what have we got to lose? Like, I don't think there's much to lose. So we went on the other end and I was chatting with Susan and 15 minutes went by and I just, because people would ride around and then they would come talk to us. I mean, legitimately, we're just standing around. Stood around for 15 minutes, stood around for 15 minutes while Buck rode, stood around for 45 minutes while we answered questions. And one of the techniques one of the things that I've been really conscious of in those situations, because he started out not herd bound, is like when everybody gets to moving or when Buck's like, come on in, guys, when everybody kind of moves forward, I just sit there and Zorro stays with me. And then when everybody gets settled, then we go. Versus like everyone's going, we're going too, because you don't want to like build that in. Mm-hmm. So I could not believe it. Like we had a one rein stop that was required, but for the most part, that was a big change. And then he was signed, like he yawned Friday, no joke, for 3 hours. Have you ever even heard of that? I forgot to ask Buck because we were on to so many other things.
Well, that's pretty incredible because at least from my experience, for them to yawn, there has to be a letting go of something they just had. So he was, if he's in and out of yawning or yawning that many times, hours, he's going a little heightened anxiety and then come back down, a little heightened anxiety, come back down. And the heightened anxiety, excuse me, heightened anxiety might not be anything more than, kind of a holding your breath while standing still, while staying in your little cocoon. But it was enough for him to and let down with the yawn. That's pretty cool.
And I almost feel like it was all the years.
Letting go of everything, yeah.
Because Friday was the most dramatic. In terms of like, it was seriously, I feel like 3 hours straight. It was crazy. And then, he'd sort of figured out that we would do something and then he could get long and yawn. Well, then Saturday, there was a little bit more of being kind of flat. And I didn't do as many short serpentines. And when I say short serpentines at the beginning of Friday, it was like 8 turns or something like that, And then one of the notes that Buck had given me in summer was you'll never believe this, do less sooner. But that was a good note because Zoro knows so many things. It was like, whoa, do I really go back to like colt starting 101, like one rein stops and short serpentines? Because on 1 second he can do piaffe and passage and pirouettes, canter pirouettes, and blah, blah, blah. And then the other second he's like back to like the beginning. And so it was taking me a little bit to adjust to kind of going up and down the scale so fast. but on the other hand, I think I mentioned this in summer, you can feel the wave of anxiety coming up. You know how it is as you start to get to know a horse, you start to go, okay, this is going to here. That is what's happening. And rather than waiting to see if he can cope, it's like, just try to put that out as soon as possible. And if that's going to a one rein stop, totally fine. If that's going to short serpentines, that's fine too. Now, the short serpentines, we had actually done a few more at home, like recently, because I had a feeling I was going to need them. So just polish those up a little bit. And then part of the challenge, and for those of you guys that have not ridden in a buck wrangling clinic or any big clinic, part of the challenge is that you are amongst all the other horses. And so that can restrict the space you have to ride in. And depending on the day, depending on the class, you might not have as much room as you would hope to do that. And so sometimes it is just a one rein stop where you're like, really, ideally it would be a short serpentine because that is so relaxing. So but that's just part of it, as you know. And then at one point, one of the girls, you know how like as your horse gets better and like the initial shock, well, maybe you don't know this, but the initial shock of being in the clinic, kind of wears down a little bit. Then the traffic can start to piss you off, right? Because you're like, okay, now let's do something. And I always think, yeah, get out of my way. One of my friends, who shall remain nameless, is like, I will cut you. But that wasn't at this clinic. But it's always funny to look over and have someone be like, you just know they're grinding their teeth. But it's just something you just have to accept. It's part of the price you pay for the cool opportunity to be riding in such a large group. So anyway, that was definitely new.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's lots of what happened in your horse and what you observed. I wouldn't even say what new resources, but what kind of revelations came to you outside of just, that was cool, this opportunity opened up, where you could have been really worried, but instead, doing less sooner, just doing almost nothing, as opposed to doing, as you called with Lil, the traditional warm-up, opened up that opportunity for him to be quiet. What did you learn as you were going through the clinic, doing the exercises, getting feedback?
You mean, what did I learn from the...
What either questions you asked about, comments he made regarding Zorro, but it sounds like you were starting from a phenomenal spot, having such a good session Thursday, Friday being really turned loose. What did that turn into as far as the things you were getting Saturday and Sunday that probably were much easier to accomplish given how turned loose he was Friday?
Yeah, and then on Sunday we did have the weather come in, which was perfect because it was perfect because the weather came in at the beginning of class Sunday afternoon and then cleared up a little bit towards the end, which is great because of course it's ideal that we don't end on the scariest time. But he did get, it was a lot, just pouring down rain, wind, thunder, and all of a sudden he's like, because we go from being able to do 4/4 yields, a million of them if need be, sometimes perfect, sometimes not perfect, but he can get into his little sit and just stay there till all of a sudden he can't stay locked down, right? Because so then you got to switch. And of course, again, once the weather came up, then some of the other horses got scared too. And so now you don't have any room to do, the short serpentines. So he definitely did get really scared. But again, when he knows where to be, he's like, oh, okay, there's a place for us. And even on that day, he was yawning a little bit more. Well, first of all, riding the front of the rectangle with him, again, it gets to that hindquarters being unlocked and him just sort of, kind of wanting to fishtail around with his hindquarters. That's just it's just a mess. Like the horse just gets to be such a mess over it. And so making sure, being preemptive of him not pushing on the front of the rectangle, which he can do just mentally. Because he doesn't feel heavy. But if you go to stop hard, or if you go to stop hard, you can tell that he's on the front. But again, in class, there are limitations as to how much you can do that, or even if it's appropriate. If everyone else is trotting up behind you, have to try to make sure you roll out of traffic or be near a wall or something like that. So it's not like you can do it all the time, but that is definitely something that I was a lot more preemptive about this time, and just willing to give him the opportunity to do it. And then even if it was going to look gnarly, is kind of get him back for his own peace of mind. Another thing I was thinking, the transition, and this will mean something, I think, to quite a few of you guys that are watching that I know. The transition from this empathy for the horse of they're scared and you've kind of put them in this situation, and two, I will help you. This will help you. I'm here to help you. Don't worry. I'm doing this for you. That is a big, at least it was for me, probably not for you, but it was for me. Like there was an empathy of like, oh, I'm putting you in a situation, like let's say at a buck clinic or in an arena that scares you or whatever, hobble you up or tie you up or whatever. It's like there was definitely a clear shift, and it came from watching Gary start colts. That's what it came from, because it was so clear, oh, we're doing this for them. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise it's impossible. How would they even know anything? Mm-hmm. That was of value.
You're educating them. I'm gonna be annoying here. My phone the battery was full, now it's not, so I'm gonna go get a cord and plug it in.
Okay. That sounds good. Good, at least he has to leave this time instead of it just being me. Faith, the biggest, are you saying that one of the biggest struggles is sometimes feeling like you're doing it to the horse, right? I was exactly the same way, and just like, you're my horse, you're my thing, and I'm going to make it up to you, but this is, I'm so sorry that we're having to do this. It's a completely different feeling when you're like, that I am giving you something of value, versus like you're having to cope with something that I'm doing to you. And once I made that shift, that really helps my overall application, right, of what I'm helping my horse with. There was one time on Sunday when Zorro was super scared, and I went right away to the short Serpentine. He was super challenged, and we ended up kind of close to Buck because that was the only space there was, really. I mean, I try not to be right on him in case he wants to ride around or whatever, and other people want to ask questions. So sometimes there's not even that much space around him anyway, but we ended up kind of close to him. And I was smiling, where normally I would, even if I wasn't scared, I would like have like this feeling of like, we're getting through this. I had a different feeling of like, this is exactly what we need, because I'm going to show you that we're fine in this situation. So I look up at Buck, I kind of look, and he winks at me, and I'm like, well, at least he's gone from like, you can't help me, to, can you help me? Like, mm-hmm. Yes, I can totally help you. But part of that, and I think we talked about this last week, right, is part of mitigating the fear is knowledge. So additionally, part of that confidence of like, I can help you. Let me show you some things. I can help you. Is really knowing how to help. And so once I was kind of on to the whole like kind of the process of it, I was like, you stick with me, buddy, and we're going to be better. And it was.
Yeah. That's interesting. I never thought of the shift between empathy and I'm helping you. But yeah, it's interesting. I think you need the empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think both are empathetic.
Yeah. Rather than being like, oh, I'm sorry. This is going, hey, we're going to get through this. Yeah. You're going to learn that this is okay.
And not just you're going to learn this is okay, but this is of value.
Yeah.
Like, I am going to give you something of value. And that's where, I guess, just from watching Gary start these baby horses, it's like, well, they don't know anything and they need to know it. Like, they are not going to get by without knowing how to be halter broke, knowing how to be doctored. It's like, it was just so obvious, like, oh, they need these things. I have something of value to give to them. Mm-hmm. So both are empathetic, but I maybe didn't say that exactly right, but like just feeling sorry for what I'm doing to them. It's like, no, I'm doing this for you. And certainly that's, anytime you can mitigate a horse's fear versus like it's maybe harder to justify making them work super hard. But again, even if you're working physically, the horse is working very hard, that's good for them too.
Yeah.
But it was neat, even amongst all the chaos, for Zorro to just be like, and actually sigh. And there were a couple times too, and this started Friday, and probably a lot of you guys have experienced this. But, as you go through horses, you're like, okay, I'm waiting for this sign and this sign and this sign and this sign. You can't make them happen. But you imagine, here I'm on this big black, war horse, right? And so we're sitting in class, and like I said, we have our back to the easy wall, like where he feels safe. But there were a couple times he looks back around at me like, are we really going to be here for a while? And I'm like, hi. Like, I'm waving down at him because, there are times when the horse is not going to look back at you. Mm-hmm. They might, in the beginning, look back at you because they're scared of you or looking at the saddle like, holy shit. But then there comes a point where they're looking at you. It's like, what's up? Isn't this fun?
Yeah.
That's pretty much my story. Buck helped me with roping. That was fun.
Any nuggets from Buck?
Nothing that you don't know. Mostly he just had to look at what I was doing.
Yeah.
And give me some help. It's nothing you don't know. Oh, it's funny though, when I swing a loop, I'm doing this, it makes it look like I'm left-handed, but on the right, because I'm right-handed. My swing can get pretty, I have a decent swing because I don't know anything different. When it comes to kind of the delivery, you know how you got to kind of slow it down at the end, right? Kind of get it going, and at the very end, you slow it down. You know how you got to take off some speed at the end on your delivery? Well, when I'm trying to think about looping my thumb around the spoke right before I let go, I cannot loop my thumb around the spoke and slow down at the same time, because every time I think about doing that, it's the last second I'm like adding velocity. I'm like,
yeah,
son of a bitch. So I'm gonna have to like somehow focus on doing that. It's just, how it is. It's just muscle memory.
Swing your loop horseback, or you?
I did swing my loop horseback throughout the weekend, but no, not for roping lesson. I was on foot with the dummy,
hanging out and roping. Yeah,
that was cool. And at the very end of class, I had Buck look at my change of direction at canter, or my flying changes, my one flying change. And by the end of class on Sunday, the ground was like hard as a rock. And I don't want to make a huge deal of like, everybody stop. So like we were a little bit trying to work around the people. So it's not like I could do a pirouette or anything to like really prepare. But he got to see the basic gist of it. And then, of course, the left to right is really not generally happening, and particularly not without some preparation. And so I was able to say, can you see why that's not happening? And his thought was to change my legs just a little bit more abruptly. So he would dial into like, oh,
difference.
Mm-hmm. And what was happening when I first started with the changes, left to right, he just would slow down too much. It's like, it was almost like I'm stopping, I'm gonna get my hindquarters to the right, and it's like, no, dude, you gotta kind of go in a flow here. But all of that was happening as he's more and more solid in staying in the rectangle. Like if we're I can do it this way. If we're cantering and we go this, and I haven't slowed down the back, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a process, because I'm not gonna be too forceful about that. And then I did ask Buck, if there was anything else he was thinking I should be doing for relaxing him. This was on Sunday, of course, because he had some notes for me in summer. And he's like, I think it's working. Just persist, which is what I was thinking too. But you know how it is. Buck's not going to necessarily be like, you do this, you do that. And if you don't ask, then it could be like, well, I was waiting for you to ask me.
Yeah.
But you can't ask out of order, because then you might get in trouble for that too.
You know these things and are able to time things and strategize your questions better than most.
Sometimes, right? But sometimes not so much.
No.
Yeah, I didn't have a ton. Really, I was like, oh, this will be short Serpentine weekend. So it was a surprise that it kind of, that it wasn't.
That sounds really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was my whole thing. Pretty much. And I drove myself up there and back and survived the whole thing. And Kip's been incorning all week, so he'll be back today.
This week, because Buck's down there. Got it. And there's decent golfing down there in Seattle with the rain, not so much, or Spanaway.
Right. They had a good golf day on Thursday, but they would have only gotten to play one day, whereas Kip going down there this week, they've played like 12 rounds of golf or something silly.
Okay.
And it's 70 degrees or whatever down there. I'm like, well, we're in a lake up here now. Oh, and I just want to note, for those of you guys that are Horsemanship insiders, I'm sending you an email today, but if you look under Rook, you will see a new video there. Mm-hmm. There'll be a couple good riding videos of her, I think. So what else is going on with you? What did you do instead of coming to the clinic?
A lot of non-horse stuff. Also worked, I have a couple new horses coming in. Been working with my paint, who I've named Cinco. I've been really taking that pretty slow, mostly because be able to do it with Sam so she can see all of the process, and she's not able to be there every day. So that's going to be a little spotty at first. I'm not going to work with her at all in the next week because Sam's gone. And I have plenty of other horses I got to get to.
What's she like?
She's a little reserved, kind of hesitant, not spooky, pretty quiet. She just be there. She doesn't look for you a whole bunch yet. Yeah, she's not really bright in her wanting to find you, if that makes sense. She's just a pretty quiet horse. So I think once she settles into wanting to cuddle, basically, she'll look for you a little more. And I think she's just going to be a real easygoing, gentle little horse. So
it's always interesting, right? If they're in their little shell, you never know for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's not like she's crammed into her shell, though.
Fair enough, but still.
Yeah, it's not like she's been through a lot and kind of been driven there. But yeah, that's what I was telling Michelle that the other day. Like, she could be, once she settles in, just very mellow and a very obedient type of horse because she's just looking for there not to be any trouble. Or she could kind of, that could persist, that like little apprehension, and she could be a horse that's willing but also a little tendency to look at things and have a little startle, as opposed to okay, I'm just sensitive and responsive, but I haven't got that little thing to it.
Yeah.
Holding your breath. So
Yeah. Remember, it's funny how they could change though. You don't necessarily know. Even like you said, with a horse that's not dull because someone made them dull and then now they're reactive or whatever. But like Bonnie, my little Pinto, she's like this little sweet flower, kind of meek. And nothing really bad I don't think had happened to her, and she had enough life and stuff. I brought her out of her shell and she was like, okay, everyone's gonna.
yeah, I see that happening with her as she gets. Yeah, I don't know. She's just very quiet even as she moves around the pen, but I've definitely seen that where you're like the horse is pretty reserved and then suddenly they get more confident and their body starts snaking around, they're moving their shoulders and they're looking all fancy and proud of themselves, and
It's like they got a makeover or something. You put the heels on and the lashes, and they're like, no, everyone's gonna listen to me, except for me.
and you have to nurture that, right? You have to be like,
well, you have to kind of
yeah,
shape it a little bit and still be like, yes, but I get to say where we go to dinner.
yeah.
Yes, but I get to say what car I get to drive,
That's funny.
But you can be fabulous on your own. That's I think was the fun part about that video with Rook. And again, part of like knowing where you're going next so that you can say, oh, I'm going to help you, but also you don't waste that fabulousness that can come out. You're like, yes, let's put it to use.
Yeah.
What just occurs to me though, as we're talking about it, is isn't it fascinating all the different machinations or all the different evolutions that a horse will go through? Well, I've been talking about this for a few days. This idea that the clean colt is going to be a reflection of you, right? Versus getting an aged horse or rescue horse or something like that. You definitely go into archaeologist mode a bit, like discovering things versus like, I'm a builder and here's what we're going to build. So what you discover as you go, whether it's just a matter of laying things brick by brick or if she's going to change. You like her so far though?
Yeah. She's really, she's kind of what I was looking for, a real quiet, easygoing horse. And, it should be easy to find her at home from what I can tell. Michelle actually owns her half brother and he's a little bit more like kind of dorky in your face, which she could be, but isn't right now. Kind of annoying, into everything sort of horse, but real easygoing, pretty gentle. So I think they'll be kind of they feel in that same vein. She's just not as dorky. So she should be a great little horse for someone, wanting to trail ride or just enjoy doing horsemanship or any of that, which is kind of what I was looking for. There's enough people looking for that kind of horse. So what else? I have a mare named Mabel that I had in 3 years ago. Cat who owns a porter, that really reactive sorrel gelding.
Porter was the one in the famous Michael Sparkling shot from Nicole.
Right. Yeah. You remember what my face is doing, but it was pretty hilarious. So I started Mabel, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, probably maybe more than that, 5 years ago. And so she's back. She just wants to get a little more time on her. She has a young gal that wants to lease her, maybe own her. So I'm doing some lessons with her. And she's just very flat in her movement, wants to travel with her head very low. So trying to reshape the rectangle there a little bit is going to be the process we'll go through. Sam will be riding her some. I've been riding her some. So there's another horse, Curly, named Clyde.
Aww.
He is about the most compliant horse I know, but he was giving this gal trouble with the trailer loading. So when he first came, this is a while back, a couple 3 months ago, he was here for a month, and the initial thing was like he goes in the trailer, but he's just barges through things, and he's not settled, and he's not connected, and she just really wanted more from him. She knew there was more there. So we really brought him out of his shell. He's much more engaged. He thinks about where he's putting his feet rather than just crashing over the log or jumping over, just going over the bridge real fast, or just going in the trailer super obediently, but never really being settled about it. Everything was just, I do it because I'm supposed to do it. So now he thinks about everything. It's all good. Well, now he's taken to, I want to be with my buddies and not go in the trailer. Well, she brought him, took him forever to get her in the trailer. And then, ever since, now here, he's way more calm than he was at home. And he's going in the trailer beautifully and all this. So it's kind of funny what crops up. I told her it's fantastic that he still feels bright and not made to do things, but you kind of, in a way, brought this on yourself by giving him, or we brought it on her, by giving him agency, maybe, giving him the space to have his own ideas. More or less yesterday, we took him in amongst these trees, and I pulled a trash can out in the trees, and I was kind of popping out of the trees here and there, and he was getting all animated because what he's doing at home is just huge reactions, rearing up and whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, we need to get to the bottom of this, and we're not getting it with the trailer because he's not reacting that way with the trailer. So he would just kind of fly off the handle, and she wasn't getting to the hindquarters. She just lost all control of the feet with precision. So we worked on that, and I think she's going to be pretty successful now. If he goes to kind of dramatically saying, I'd rather not go there, I want to go back with my friends. So that's Clyde. And he's just something you said earlier, less sooner with Zorro, and how you were just kind of not doing anything, just standing there and letting him find space, letting him find peace there with you without going through the traditional, like you said, with the traditional warm-up. It made me think of Clyde and some of what we were doing the other day. She wasn't doing a lot. It wasn't like she was putting a ton of pressure on, but it was almost like she just needed to suggest something with like the slightest bit of energy coming up, and then just wait for him to think his way through it. Like, it wasn't like even release when he starts doing it, right? So he was backing over a log, a little bit bigger than a pole. And if she just said, hey, back over it, it just brought up all this, oh, I got to do this anxiety. And if it was just like, hey, notice that thing behind you? What do you think about it, basically? And then he starts going with his legs like, okay. He start basically, with his hind legs, feeling where is it and what could I do with it? And he pretty much had the idea himself almost to back over it. And then it was like not a thing. It wasn't a matter of, a warm up or calming down and just finding a quiet place, but how little it can take, especially with a horse like him that's really pretty willing. Doing so much less is almost, it's imperative, because if they feel pushed, you're getting them to do something, but it's driving them right back into that either shut down or kind of like frantically obedient mode. That was really pretty fun. I also had her back him up and put his tail on the trailer door, because he just kind of had drama around getting in the trailer at home, just has translated into, there's a trailer there, I'm kind of anxious. So I was like, well, don't put him in, just go put his tail on there. And again, it was like, slow down, let him like consider what he's supposed to do. Don't just say, hey, come on, I want your tail on there. And she got it, and it was pretty quiet. And then later I was showing her something, and I was like, well, I'll just back him up so he's standing with his tail at the, in the opening of the trailer, or, in the door. And I was talking to her, explaining something or whatever, and he like scooted over like 2-3 feet and backed up a little bit more and put his tail right on the center of the door. I was just like, see, he like really wants to engage and do stuff. So you just have to quiet down more than you would a lot of horses and suggest things and say, hey, let's do some cool things together, whether it be, backing over a log or even anything riding, like just learning to refine it down to just feeling that left leg over there as opposed to picking up a rein and pulling it over there, or really coming in with a leg, not even kicking, but just pushing with that leg, and instead just opening up. And then, that's a challenge for, she's quite a beginner. She's only had horses for a little over a year, to jump to that level of communication in a short amount of time. But he's definitely calling her to it. She has a mule too, who is kind of the same thing. The more you do, the more the horse or the mule feels pushed. I haven't met the mule, but that's what she's describing him as. So Clyde's fun. His ears are starting to get very curly as it cools down.
Oh my gosh, right? So cute. I love the hair. I love it all. Yeah. It's funny how some of those highbrow cats have that curly hair on their fetlocks.
Really?
Like, that gene's in there. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're part curly?
Well, that's all the genes go all through everybody, but I guess that must be paired up with something.
That's funny.
Something that has been selected for.
I also have a little Lusitano in.
Ooh.
Yeah, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, I can't remember.
To get started?
Yeah.
Oh, fun. What color?
He's red. He's got a little white, not like a paint spot, but like a little rony spot on one hip. That's like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, a lot of them. Vantos was like that too.
Oh, really?
Really roan. Mm-hmm.
Well, this is just one spot. But Sam's been working with him, and he's kind of got some opinions, a little bit of an attitude about moving out for her. And it was kind of yesterday, I was like, is this me or is this the horse? I'm like, well, he's not a real straightforward horse. We were talking like your window of the amount of pressure and the timing with which you do things is pretty narrow with him. Some horses you can be pretty slow about your ask and not get to the point very quickly, or other horses you can kind of come on strong, a little bit fast, and like, oh geez, but they do it. With him is like, that was too fast, that was too slow, you're being
sounds like a Lusitano.
Exactly, right? And so I've been helping her through.
You're like, get your shit together.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going home.
Yeah, you need to be better than you are, right? Which is hard for Sam.
Exactly.
Like, I'm better than I am.
Oh.
He wants it so bad. So, so they've been, trying to figure she's been trying to figure him out. So I'll be riding him, this whole next week and see.
She'll feel good once she gets, probably it'll be a big deal once the horse is like, good job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're finally asking with the polite manner that you should.
Uh-huh. One of the cool things, of course, about being at a buck clinic is getting to watch a bunch of horses that you normally don't get to see. And since I was watching the morning class, I was telling this to Kip. I feel a lot of empathy for folks with stockier type horses that appear to not have enough life. And I think it's quite what's the word when you just go off track, just getting in the weeds so bad when you think that it's because of their personality. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you're never going to have life if you don't have some gymnastics. And those tank-like horses can certainly have it. No problem. Well, I mean, it's harder for them. But I have no room to say anything when I'm sitting on the horse that I'm sitting on. No one wants to listen to me about anything, which is fine because I But you know, from the marshmallow was a perfect example. But I feel empathy for folks that are like kicking on their horse, you know, and it's like, oh man. And then, you know, you come up against the wall of what's even possible to develop if you don't have enough life. But no amount of, you know, hammering on the horse forward. And Buck really did repeat several times, and I always love it when he says it. It's like, life is not speed. A dull horse can go fast. And he always says, you know, this is about a promptness, a lightness to the response. And of course, he's right about all those things. But I would just add all the gymnastics that he's taught us how to get in those horses is the way to get the lightness and the promptness. Mm-hmm. And no amount of just being
preparedness. If they're not prepared, they can't be really alive. They have to learn to, like you're saying, gymnastically put themselves together, be prepared biomechanically to do that. Otherwise, you are just hurling them forward. If they willingly do go forward with your pounding on them, you're just hurling them forward out of balance, and it's not gonna ever feel powerful.
Yeah, and I would say yes, prepared, but also conditioned over time, because particularly, you know, the horses that are much more tank-like, you know, it's going to take some conditioning to enable them to be able to move like that over time.
Yeah.
With not more than just one step.
Yeah. So Val raised a horse named Bella. She's at our barn now. Gal owns her. Stephanie's been riding her, doing an amazing job.
I saw her, right?
You saw? Yeah. Yes, you saw that horse, Bella. Stephanie's been riding her, doing a really nice job of getting her gymnastically to move a little bit better. She had 2 weeks off, and now she's bigger belly and just not as fit as she was even 2 weeks ago. I mean, that's how quick it can go, particularly on a thicker horse. You know, last night Stephanie was riding her, and I'm like, you know, it's there. Like, you can see her really trying. You can tell it's on the menu, and she's able to get there. You're presenting it well. She just needs now to get in shape again to be able to carry that better, to find that easier. And the other thing I kind of mentioned to Steph was that same thing. Like, when you release, say, hey, that's good, and we're not going to ask you to carry it forever. There was a good effort, and the horse just goes flat, right? And it's just like, oh, that just looks terrible, feels terrible, but you got to let go at some point. And in those moments, you know, there was kind of a fair amount of like, let's put power in when she was working on balancing up this trot and doing some arcs and trying to redistribute the weight back over the hind end, get some life. And then she come down to the walk. I was like, slow down. As soon as you go to a walk, you got to slow down. Find the walk that's appropriate to her being
active recovery.
Yeah. Being a little bit out of balance, right? If you're just motoring forward in that walk without any balance, you're not helping her feel any more settled. Not that she's a really troubled horse, or any more balanced the next time you pick up the reins and ask her to shorten the rectangle. You know, that was interesting. That's Bella's story. Jesus. We have so many freaking horses right now. I don't know. It's like suddenly, so many training horses, a few new boarders, and
oh my God. Yeah, I was calling around for a real estate client who's also a horse friend. She's moving here across the country. Like, everyone's full, 100% full. It's crazy. Okay, Corey, I have one of those tanks trying to learn to lope correctly, and we both end up in a sweat after a few laps, right? It's a slow process to get that conditioning. Or maybe it's the rookie pilot. Well, perhaps, perhaps a little bit of both, right? Yeah, I mean, the technique, wouldn't you say, Michael, that there is some technique that the human develops over time?
That I have a very hard time describing and communicating to people.
One of the things that pops in my mind, just getting the sweat part, you know, is probably trying to do too much, too asking for too long to sustain it for too long if you're getting super sweaty. Like if you as the human are working really hard. And again, remember there's ways to find it on the ground too, to put it a little bit more on the menu and to help the horse gymnastically have some more things available. But I think it's sustaining it. Like if it's a lot of work to sustain, then probably the building blocks are not what they could be. Remember, like we were talking, who were we talking to about that horse when you guys were asking me, I think something about life, right? And it was like in the hindquarters, forequarters.
I'm trying to think which horse that was.
And then I said, well, then you don't have enough air time. I think the front quarters were heavy or something like that.
Yeah.
Building more air time, which to Corey probably means nothing at this moment. But I would say that the tank-like horses, that sustaining the gymnastic is definitely a process. And then exactly what you're saying about Bella, she has a couple of weeks off, even though she might know what to do. It might take her a few days to like get conditioned up again. And then I feel like the worst thing that you can do with a horse that is not conditioned to be athletic over time, in a sustained manner, is then to hammer on that, because the more tired they get, of course, the flatter they become, the less life they have. But the secret is you find those moments where they're gymnastically it's working, and reward that, and then you just build it, and then pretty soon it's amazing what they can do if they stay conditioned. And that's the brilliance of Buck's curriculum. I think maybe that comes down to knowing what you're feeling for, because I do know some folks. I'm making it sound very critical. I'm not trying to say it in a critical way. I can just, how I can see where people are up against a wall and they're like, well, I need a horse with more life. You can do that. But I'm looking at your horse right now, and I can see that they could have way more life if they were gymnastically unlocked. Mm-hmm. First of all, I have empathy for you. And most likely, if you just hang in there, you figure it out. But my note, you're welcome. My note on that is look for briefer moments where the horse feels more powerful, and reward those, because, well, I don't know. I won't give one of my gym analogies, but it's conditioning, What were you going to say? You have a horse in the barn right now?
Yeah. Fellow at the barn who is pretty frustrated with his horse and points a lot of it to not having enough life, or being, the horse is a little bit looky, but being kind of spooky. And it's like, I am very much if he doesn't ask for help, if there's not a request for input, I'm not going to just volunteer. No unsolicited advice is kind of one of our mottos at the barn. Not everybody needs to hear what you think they should do with their horse, me included. Now, unless it's unsafe, right? So I'm not pushing all the time, but I've said numerous times in the past, and we've worked on it. Basically, you need to travel in a soft feel more frequently, like a greater portion of your ride. If you allow him to be just splat and strung out, nothing is going to work, because that's the way he's going to tend to go. So you have a greater responsibility with this particular horse to help him move differently than you would a horse that's naturally more balanced or more uphill or more forward and lively.
Not blocked longitudinally, in other words.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Corey, if you're still listening, I would say, the secret to life moving forward is lateral bend. They have to be bendy laterally, and then they have to put a bend in their hocks, and then they have to be able to put those things together. But exactly as you're saying with the guy that you're talking about, it's like, how do you pop them up over their back so that they can, so that when they push from the hocks, where does it go? There are some folks that I watch that I really admire and have worked their butt off and understand a soft feel. Definitely have some semblance of it. And still, the horse has figured out how to move in that shape, kind of, to make it look like a soft feel, right? But it's not
powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Power. Flatten out too often. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You mentioned to Corey things you can do on the ground, and it comes from lateral movement and lateral balance. I mean, it's the whole curriculum, as you said, but what are the elements that are critically useful, like the immediate usefulness to create those moments of power?
Hindquarters, forequarters, go.
Forequarters, go. Backing a circle. Serpentines, where you're making sure you're balancing to the outside of the horse.
Well, I mean, all of it then. If you're just going to name off all of it. Yes. Yes.
I guess it's how much. Like, you have to put a limit on how many you're going to list.
Well, you just said what are some of the things.
Yeah.
But I would say,
I feel like it's easy to know the curriculum and do all of the movements and go, but how do I create that moment of power using these movements? Like, where do I find that the easiest? What moments am I looking for it in? Because you can back and step forward or trot out of out of the backup and not getting any power. So it's feeling for what in the backup? It's feeling for the engagement. It's feeling for the hocks to bend. It's feeling for your horse to be round and then going forward. Hindquarter, forequarter, go. It's hindquarter, forequarter, immediately go before we lose. That kind of thing is where someone could be doing all the things and trying their darndest to get power, or maybe not really knowing what they're looking for. And that's, I think, the case of what you're describing there. When you were saying, I don't want to be critical, but you can end up in that spot. So it's knowing what the moments are, making sure you're feeling for the hind end to engage, and then using that.
Yeah, and that's why Buck is saying that. That's why he's saying a promptness to respond.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm speaking for him, but I'm pretty sure he would agree with that because he's saying, okay, look at all these exercises, and then, but you need a promptness of response. Yes, of course, and that's exactly what you're saying is why, because when you get them prepared, you got to show them, what to do with it. And I think
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, some of those things will tell on you, immediately. Like, for instance, and the additional thing I would just side note to say about the hindquarters, forequarters, go, is you have to have a united arc, kind of, the idea of united arc, because if you just do hindquarters, forequarters, go without any, plan of where that's going to be happening, then that doesn't work either. Yeah, so I would say hindquarters, forequarters, go. If the horse is seriously in that delay, it's not going to work. But don't you think that should be obvious? Can you yield the hindquarters and yield and then yield the forequarters and trot off? Or is it like, bleh? And if you're on the ground, you should be able to like chop chop. And the good part about doing it on the ground is it's pretty obvious, like to just do a few steps.
Yeah. And I think what I'm saying about the, getting those movements, but not getting the power that you're looking for, not maybe knowing how to find that. Because the horse can even understand, move the hindquarters, move the forequarters, and trot out of there. And it's still not have power or be lively. Right? You can even do that.
I don't know that a horse could yield the hindquarters, yield the forequarters, and lope out of there. Lope. See, this is how I've been around cowboys too long. And canter out of their tracks. I don't think you can do that.
Out your tracks is a little different than just trotting out. You can trot pretty dang lazy. But pushing up into a lope, yes, I would agree with you. And that's the thing. I always, it's so hard to communicate to, and you're like, why the fuck are you so worried about communicating it to people? That's what I do, right? And
I know, I'm not. I'm just saying, I'm just giggling because I'm like, thank God I don't have to do that.
Yeah. But, so I use the analogy quite frequently. When you jump in your truck and you hit the gas, you know what you expect that vehicle to do, right? You don't punch the gas or just lay your foot on the gas and go,
we'll see what we have.
You recognize that immediately as a problem and you go, I've got to fix this, because you know what it should feel like when you hit the gas. When you're asking your horse to do something, punctuality, life, preparedness isn't something that you get around a horse and you just know what it looks like, know what it feels like, and how to create it. So you can be going, okay, yeah, my horse is trotting around me. The horse is just dopily trotting around you. Or I can do a walk or hindquarters, forequarters, and my horse trots out of there, but there's not that much engagement in that forequarter yield, not much power into the trot. It's just that little joggy sort of trot. And again, going through the motions, the horse is even going, okay, I know what to do, but I do it maybe not totally checked out, but not very engaged, either physically in their body or that much engaged mentally, because we've done this 1,000 times. So helping people to see what life looks like, how to step in there and say, come on, let's get alive. When it's not there, well, you can't send your horse to the trainer. You can't send your horse to the mechanic when it doesn't match up, the request and the response. You're the mechanic. You're the one there. I know you don't like the term mechanic, but
no,
you're the one there that says, hey, come on, I need a little more from you here. Like, let's do this.
Yeah, and sometimes I feel like I have had really good luck with helping someone else's horse for a moment, for a few minutes, either riding for a few minutes or doing a few minutes of groundwork. Doesn't take much, and the person's like, whoa, the horse, and then the horse knows that moment, and then you hand it over and you're like, okay, feel for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then most people can see it. It carries a little bit in a lot of cases, as long as you don't sit there and talk about it for 5 minutes and the horse falls asleep.
Yeah.
So it does carry, but it also, the moment, a delay is allowed, like you step into the hindquarters and they're not really there and you don't say anything about it, well, right off, we're right back to, okay, we're going through the motions. So I don't quite know how I got onto all that.
Well, it's because, helping folks that are really trying.
Yeah.
And like what I always want to say is, don't give up on your horse, because it's not them. It's not the fact that they can't do it. It's just not the fact that they can't do it. It's the fact that you don't know exactly what you're doing yet. To be fair, that's always the answer when we're not getting the result that we want. But I think these horses that are kind of more lumbery, is like, well, they just don't have enough life for me. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And that's why I'm not trying to judge it at all. I just noticed it a lot that, you know, you always just think, oh, you're trying. I mean, you're hovering. This is the thing. You're hovering around the answer. You're hovering around the answer, and it's so close. Don't give up. That's what I always want to say. All of this makes sense. Got to develop my own timing and feel. And her correctness and promptness. You are very welcome. You're very welcome. It's so much easier said than done, right?
Oh yeah, and that's what I was saying. Like, how do you help people find it? Because you want it so bad for them, and you know they want it, and they're trying their best. You know, and then I have to say, hey, look, I'm struggling with stuff, you know, on a different level that's maybe more subtle than this even, you know, so give yourself space, give yourself time. But sure. There is, let me just throw this little caveat in there though, there is a lot more, like I was saying with this horse that we've been talking about, there is a lot more responsibility to help the horse, a lot more effort, not necessarily physical effort, but a lot more intentionality to help that horse move differently than there is, say, the thoroughbred that's not super flat, or the quarter horse, or the quarter horse where there's just more life there and you're not having to create it. Then it's just shaping that life. In order to create the shape, to have the life, it takes a little bit more skill, more timing, more effort, more persistence. And some people don't want to put that much effort into that part, right? Which is fine, right? Then some might be more fitting for them than others. But, you know, if they're really wanting it with that horse, yes, don't give up. If you're like, I want a different experience with my horse, and I realize what it takes.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that's the experience with my horse that I want, or that I'm up for this task, then, you know, no harm in saying, hey, you seem like this. I think you could help this horse. Can we trade? Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's how I end up with all the fancy horses.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, yeah, bring them to me. Joanne says, yeah. So, Joanne, I would say, I know Michael very, very well. He's not going to give up on you. You should just not waste any time on worrying about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, we have 2 minutes left before you have to go today. Yeah. And I need to get going as well. The real estate market continues to pound along. But I am going to send you guys that email here in the next few minutes, so you'll all be able to check that out. So the line at the end of this video is, if everything is shaping up, then the soft feel should appear as if by magic. And that would be my last thought for today, is that there is magic in the lateral work, particularly in a hind quarter yield. There's more magic than we think in there. And if it is not creating life, if hindquarters, forequarters is not creating life or calming them down, but there's a lot of possibility in there. So I would say possibility. Mm-hmm.
A lot of potential there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of possibility in there. So if it's not working, just think about that, and maybe just believe that there could be a little bit more. Well, on to another good week. I'm going to do some filming this week. Excited to get back to Rook. I'm going to get that Arab, I think, for this weekend. And Zoro's going to have a couple more days off. I rode Davina the other day. I haven't been riding her that much. I think, did I mention to you? Aww.
I want to see more of her.
I know. I will. There's only just so much time, but yes, I will. No. Okay. Well, you have a good day. Thanks, everybody, for joining in with us this week. Totally awesome. We're on every Thursday morning at 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
8:30 Central.
Yep.
See you next week.
See you guys next week. Bye.